Today, I am interviewing an inspirational teacher from the Muslim community. She is a well-known educational consultant who has inspired me tremendously from watching her partake in debates on Women's AM Islam channel. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the one and only Saleena Agyel. Assalamu alaikum, Saleena.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. How are you?
I'm okay. Stressed with work, but that's always the case. So I'm still smiling. I'm good, thank you.
I don't want to embarrass you, but I would like to say at this point, MashaAllah, I think you are a sensational person who has deeply motivated me with your thoughts and positivity on Islam channel. I must warn you, I was always a cheeky so-and-so as a student, and I haven't really changed as an adult, so what I am saying, you have your work cut out giving me a bit of discipline. Just kidding, ha ha ha.
Yeah, and I'm off duty, so no disciplining today.
As you have so many thought-provoking statements to make, we have two parts to this interview. As you feel so passionate about education, the second part of this interview will focus on your thoughts, opinions, and solutions to the education system. However, in this part, I would like to hear about your perspectives on self-esteem, failure, and mental health.
Absolutely.
For some background information, could you please tell us about your business as a clothes designer?
Okay, so I started my clothes designing company about 3 years ago because my daughter had a birthday party and she didn't want to wear any of the dresses in the shops, so I thought, okay, let me just design something and have it made, which is what happened. And then I thought to myself, oh, that was quite an enjoyable experience. So before I knew it, I had a website and a factory and many things that go along with starting a business, including the struggles. But you know, and you know, a lot of people talk about the struggles, but realistically speaking, it's mainly the financial struggles when you're starting a business, and I'm just going to say it because that's the truth. Business is not glamorous; it's hard. And so that was my background for my clothes business. Also, I believe that it was a desire. When you have a desire in your heart, it's like God telling you there's something else meant for you. You're not just meant to do what you're doing, do something else as well. So I decided to follow my desires, and here I am sitting with you.
Wow, Saleena, I am sure you have already inspired the viewers with your creativity. So, my next question is, how important should appearance be to us as human beings? And, can wearing smart clothes boost our motivation in life?
That's a big question. So, I didn't always wear hijab, and some would still argue that I'm perhaps not wearing it properly. But I believe that everyone's on their own spiritual journey. I can only speak for my own spiritual journey. And my spiritual journey is to be modest in every aspect of my life. So I thought, right, I'm going to dress modestly. But dressing modestly, in my mind, doesn't mean you have to disappear into the background. Because I think men should also be disciplined when it comes to behaving around women. And so I dress the way I feel, in the sense that I'm comfortable, but I'm presentable. I want to translate to my daughter that she can feel beautiful whilst being modest, to the point where the rest of the world respects her and her boundaries. So for me, it's not necessarily about the whole world, it's about my child and how I want to guide her. So going back to your question, I think you can absolutely take pride in your appearance whilst being modest. I would say that the hijab was actually a self-esteem boost because, how can I explain it? When I put it on, I realised for the first time how much I needed other people to appreciate my beauty to make me feel good about myself. So I needed other people's opinion of my beauty to validate my self-esteem. Now, I really don't give a monkey's what people think about what I look like. I dress because I think it looks nice, and I don't dress for other people to think it looks nice. And so long as my husband and my father and my immediate family are happy with me, then I'm good to go. And the great Dr. Seuss said, I love Dr. Seuss, and he says, for those who matter, for those who mind, they don't matter, and for those who matter, they don't mind. So I think that's a great philosophy to live by. So yeah, I think your self-esteem should be about what you think is beautiful and not what other people think is beautiful.
From watching the debates on Islam channel, you seem like a woman who is full of confidence. Can you please tell us an experience that's helped you become the person you are today?
Becoming a mother. So I think I questioned myself a lot growing up, and I didn't always have people respond to me the way they would respond to other people. They'd perhaps be friendlier. I found people were very friendly with me when I was by myself, but the minute I was in a group, they'd use that opportunity to put me down and make me feel less. But I don't blame them for that, because life is being done for you, not being done to you. And had they not done that, I perhaps wouldn't have grown such a strong backbone. So, going back to what you're saying, I think that it's really important to focus on what you're strong in and what your strengths are and what you're good in, and concentrate on expanding that, rather than making your areas of development kind of a focus, because then you'll just be mediocre in those areas. Whereas if you focus on stuff you're already good at, you'll excel. So I'm really good at educating, I'm really good at working with children, so I'm going to focus on that. I'm really good at design, I'm going to focus on that. But my family will tell you what I'm not good at. I'm not good at communication, I'm not good at turning up on time, as you saw from today. I can be highly disorganized, but I'm not going to focus on all that, because I was saying to your lovely mum earlier on, you need to find perfection and imperfection, otherwise you'll spend your life being sad, and I'm not about being sad. So I think that's what makes me confident. And having children, I'm so fearful that they're going to grow up doubting themselves, that I show them all the time and I remind them all the time, you are wonderful, you are good at this. Yeah, but I can't do that, mummy. Doesn't matter, but you're good at this, and you'll have a purpose in this world. So I think that's kind of what's helped me become more confident, the fear that my children won't have that confidence growing up.
Thank you for such a fascinating answer. What was education like in your childhood, and how were you motivated to become a teacher?
It was an accident. It was a complete accident. So I went to uni and I became a forensic anthropologist, and 3 months into doing that, it was really depressing dealing with death on a daily basis. And we need people in the world who can deal with that, funeral directors, morticians, all of those. We need all of those people, but they have a special gene in them where they can just cut off from that sadness, and I couldn't do that. I preferred to focus on the living. And I think as well, being an only child, I'm always fearful that one of my parents would leave me. So being surrounded by death every day reminded me of their mortality and the fact that they could leave me at any point. So I didn't like that. So I had this amazing degree, and I thought, what's the next step? A master's. So I thought, I was completely lost. And sometimes when you're completely lost, God sends you a message. So I was helping my niece with her homework one day, and she turned around to me and she said, "You're really good at this homework stuff. Why don't you become a teacher?" And I looked at her and I said, "Oh yeah, I should do that." So I thought, how do I become a teacher? And this was in July, when all the applications for being a teacher had finished. So I thought, oh, it's too late, I'll have to get a job and wait another year. But then I thought, no, let me try. So I went to see my old primary school head teacher. I went, and it was only a 10-minute walk from my mum and dad's house. So I went to to the school, knocked on the door, and they said, oh yes, Mr. Henny is still upstairs. And I said, goodness gracious, Mr. Henny is still here. So I went up the stairs, I knocked on his door, and he looked at me and he went, oh my goodness, Saleena, now I feel really old. Thank you for that. Because I was 20 when I went to see him, and the last time he saw me was when I was 11. So, and he was still terribly smart, very well presented, exactly the same way as I remember him. And we sat down, we had a chat, and within 25 minutes, he helped me get an application in. He booked some voluntary work in the school, and that was it. That was the beginning of my teaching career.
I have always been inspired by how you shared your 15-year experiences working with children to the Islam Channel viewers. In one episode of Women's AM about self-esteem, you stated, leave the impression with the other people that left footprints. They need to be secure in their belief systems, reactions, and opinions. In order to do that, it starts with childhood. Saleena, how can we spread awareness to society that childhood experiences are crucial to our human development?
Oh my goodness me. So it starts with, let's put teachers aside, it starts with parents. I mean, I still sadly hear the way some parents speak to their children on buses and in shopping centres, and they don't realise that look, as parents we're tired, we're frustrated, but in Islam we believe that children are a coolness to our eyes. So you have to search for the good in everyone, especially your children. So in those moments where you've got a million things to do and your child is bothering you, Mum, I want this, Mum, look at this, Mum, can I show you? You have to really, and I'm famous on the Islam channel for saying this, go and have a cup of tea. Yeah, you remember. So have a cup of tea and give your children that valuable time. Because when you give them that time, you are sending a message to your child. You are saying to them, you are important. You have a place in this world, and I'm going to give you my time, and I'm going to listen to what you have to say. That's stage one. Listening to your children, and I mean really listening to what they have to say, shows that child that they are valued. And when a child is valued, that's the first brick in building their self-esteem. Now, that takes, so let's say in a perfect situation, you build those blocks, you give them the time, you value them, they are helping out in the home, they are part of the decisions of the household, you know, everything from what should we cook tonight or how much should we spend on our shopping this week. Involve them in every facet of running the house. That's their first level of education. Then, unfortunately, they go to school and they're in a class of 30, sometimes 40, and that value kind of gets shattered because they're all of a sudden one of 30 children. So then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I'm not the only one that this poor teacher has to listen to. So then you have to take it a step further and say, you're one of 30, the teacher values you, but she also values the other children. So you've got to, it's a lot of talking. There's non-stop talking and communicating, listening and talking with your child, and letting them know that it's okay to feel sad, but you've got to talk about it. That it's okay to be angry, but you've got to talk about it. That it's okay to make mistakes. Even if the mistake has been made 2-3 times, you've got to, if a mistake has been made 2-3 times, it's actually not the fault of the child. There's a root problem that you've not uncovered as an adult, and you need to find out what that root problem is. And so that's why we have psychologists with adults, because what have they got to do? They've got to regress into childhood and find that root problem. And so if you can step on it in childhood, you actually then you make huge steps in building a well-rounded adult and individual.
Wow, that was such a fascinating answer. Allah has prepared you to face Jav's challenging questions, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Keeping on the topic of self-esteem, you mentioned on Islam channel, if you teach grit alongside self-esteem and rewarding, you help balance that self-esteem out. From your perspective, what are the benefits for children that inevitably experience hardships?
Yeah, gosh, you have been listening to my shows. Grit is something that you have to build because life is not a box of chocolates, like the great Forrest Gump said. And in that box of chocolates, you'll have sours and you'll have sweetness, and then you'll have the ones where you're like, oh, this is gooey and sticky, don't like that one. And so life is very much like a box of chocolates. And because life is so challenging, and I believe the great Tony Robbins said, life is not being done to you, it's being done for you. So if challenges come, it's because life, or in my point of view, because I'm Muslim, God is trying to redirect you. But because humans are unique, shall I say, in order for God to redirect us to the correct path, he can't do it with flowers and roses. He's got to send us a calamity that teaches us a lesson. Then we think, okay, I did that, it didn't work out, but if I had to do it second time, I'd do it this way. So he teaches us via calamity, unfortunately. Sometimes he teaches us via happiness, but you remember a sour experience more than a sweet one often. So grit is really important for those moments that, look, let's say you've made a decision. My daughter really wants to be a figure skater for the Olympics. She's currently going through a down point where she's not practicing as much. She's feeling tired. So I've given her a break, but there are on occasion where I've said to her, no, Ara, you've chosen this path. You've got to push through the pain of when you're tired and go and skate even though you're tired. Because when mum, like tonight, when I finish here, I've got 4 bridesmaid dresses to deliver. And my body is screaming for sleep because I've stayed up all night and I've prayed. But I can't, because if I want my business to progress, I've got to satisfy my customers, whatever it takes, so that more customers come to us, then we can grow and I can start delegating and then taking some time off. So you've got to push past the pain, and you can only push past the pain if you've got grit, if you've got backbone. And I think my mum and dad have been a great inspiration, because my dad was a bus driver for 44 years. He had urine chucked on him. He's had people vomit on him. He's had people kick his car, threaten him. And, you know, over a 44-year career, he's now retired and enjoying his moments with his grandchildren. But he's only doing that because he had the grit to push past the pain and then enjoy the fruits of his labour. So I think that's a really great timeline. Grit, push past the pain, fruits of labour.
I am sure you would agree that criticism is a part of grit, and also something that Allah tests us with. From my personal experiences, after quitting university due to a lack of support, I received criticisms that led me to have severe depression. So Saleena, how should we give and take criticisms in our daily lives?
I look at a lot of celebrities who fall down this spiral of depression, and on the odd occasion when I've had the chance to meet a few of them, they say that it gets to the point where everyone around them are yes people. So critique has its place, but my husband always says it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So and so if you want, I mean, Islam, you've got to look at the intention. My intention is to make sure that my children have the baseline education to a high quality, so that they may, if they need it, they have it, but if they don't need it, they also have it. It's better to have something and not need it than need it and not have it. So I've got to guide them with gentle criticisms, but when they're not doing what I think they should be doing, sit them down and have an honest conversation with them. And even with I'm like this with my friends, and my friends are like this with me. I mean, when I'm busy, I'm very scatty, so I often get busy and distracted, and then I perhaps don't give as much attention to my friends as I should. So they've sat me down and said, Saleena, we're not happy because we've texted you on X amount of occasions and you've not got back to us. And yes, there might be reasons, but actually, if you value our friendship, you need to respond. So I think critique has its place, but your intentions will show through that criticism. So if someone's criticising you to downgrade you, you'll know it. And I'm sure you've sensed it. But if someone's criticising you because they want you to progress, you'll also know it. So I would say to anyone, recognise the type of criticism. Is it a critique to lower you and make you feel low? Or is it a critique to raise you? And that's where you have to have grit and say, no, I'm going to take this criticism on board and move on with it. But then recognise when people are criticising you because they don't want you to succeed. You've got to kind of grow that sixth sense, I think.
Oh wow, thank you for that amazing answer. I found it really uplifting. Speaking about criticisms, let's now discuss failure. It is without doubt that many people suffer from low self-esteem due to experiencing failure and other psychological reasons. I am sure you have heard the common phrase, why do I even bother? You mentioned on Islam channel you know adults that are trying to build their self-esteem. So Saleena, how can failure make us into stronger human beings?
I can only speak for myself. I failed a lot. But I listen to people like Les Brown. I don't know if you've heard Les Brown, Tony Robbins. I do a lot of, my car is my university. I don't listen to music. Well, I do now and again, but only in a very relaxing kind of a way. But most of the time, I use my car as my university, so I will put a YouTube video on. I listened to the last interview you did, I listened to it on YouTube. I will put Les Brown, Tony Robbins, I think it's Jim Quick and his amazing advice on brain power. So I listen to lots of Islamic scholars. My car is my university. So failure, and all of the greats say the same thing. Failure is a part of life. You can't get away with it. You can't succeed all your way through life. And I always say to my children in the classroom, failure is your first attempt in learning. Fail. First attempt in learning. But very often in life you'll have a second attempt in learning and a third and a fourth, and you'll fail over and over again. But look, there's only two choices. You fail and you rise, or you fail and you fall. And when you fail and you fall, you'll just keep spiraling down to the point where you lose your family, your friends, your home, your finances. So that for me is not even an option. And the thing is with failure, you also deal with part of that failure, and rising is dealing with the grit, because people will criticize you and people will talk down to you and people will make you feel bad about yourself. In the end, I don't care, because my need to survive and to thrive and allow my children to survive and to thrive outweighs the hurt that I'm feeling inside because someone's hurt my feelings. Because at the end of the day, if they hurt my feelings and I rise and I become successful, then you can kind of go at the end of the day. And you know what, Denzel Washington, I watched a talk on him the other day. He said, each one teach one. So as each person rises, you've got to pull one person up with you. So I believe that failure is a necessity, absolutely a necessity. But there's two options: fail and rise, fail and fall. And so if you fail and fall, we know that where that's going to go. You see it all the time. People who are homeless, when I speak to them, they're completely and utterly devoid of any hope. And that for me is not an option. My children are far too important. My family are far too important. So I've got to fail and I've got to rise. Even in the face of people talking down to me, criticising me, making me feel little, belittling me, I don't care. I will just take it on my shoulder and carry on going. So that's how I deal with it.
Thank you for that remarkable answer. I would like to turn our attention to mental health and the youth. According to BBC News, antidepressants for children are on the rise. In total, there were 950,000 prescriptions issued between April 2015 and March 2018. I am sure you'll agree that this is an extremely worrying statistic. Saleena, can you please give us 2 main reasons why depression and anxiety have increased amongst our youth today?
I think parents have a lack of skill on how to break situations down. So when children are feeling tense, stressed, parents don't necessarily have the skill to sit down and unpick that stress and anxiety so you get to the root cause and deal with that. I would say, again, I won't speak for other people, speaking for myself, I have made many mistakes with my own children. But I've recognised that, that wasn't the best reaction I could have had. And I will go and study what other parents had, what other leaders have done. Because I want to create leaders, I don't want to create sheep. And so I want them to lead the pack. I want my children to be thrown at the wolves and come back leading the pack. That's what I want. That's what I want to develop. So I'm constantly, and I'm tired from doing it. It's really mentally draining because every word that comes out of my mouth, I'm like, was that the best thing I could have said? Is that the best way I could have, directed their anger, their sadness, their happiness? So it's a constant cycle of questioning. I'm always questioning what I'm doing. And like today, I ran out the house, I was like, Dad, I'm late for this interview, I've got to go. By the way, I may be late for dinner. Would you mind getting them pizza? And so I've run out the house and I'm not cooked for my children. So, life is not about being perfect. I'm not perfect. But I think you have to strive for perfection because that's what the prophet, peace be upon him, always did. He was not perfect, but he strived for perfection. So I think there's blessing in that struggle. So I think if parents stop and think about what they're going to say before they say it, that will help. I also think that parents have to gain control of their children again. As much as I've got a mutual understanding with my children, I am the queen of the household. So if I think you are on that iPad for far too long, guess what? It gets taken away. You can cry, you can moan, you'll get over it. It's fine. So I think parents need to not be afraid of their children. They need to, the communication needs to be mutual. So when you've done something wrong, your child needs to be respectfully aware that they are able to come and say, Mum, I didn't like the way you said that to me. I didn't agree with what you said. So long as the dialogue is respectful, that will build their self-esteem to know that they can face people in the world and talk to them one-on-one. And that way, you deal with anxiety and stress because they're always going to come to you and say, Mum, I made this huge mistake. I did. I'm 13 years old. I made this huge mistake. I tried something I shouldn't have tried. Okay, let's talk about why you tried it. Let's talk where you got it from. Was it a drug? Was it this? Just don't scream at them so that they run off and then turn to their friends who are also 13 and have the maturity of a 13-year-old. And then that kind of builds on that anxiety and that depression. So I would say tablets are a massive issue. Tablets and electronic devices, take control. I'm not saying they don't have their place. They do. Take control of them, take them away. Let your child know that there is more to life than staring at a screen. Talk to your children. Talk. Take them out. Go for a walk. Don't spend money. If money is an issue, go to the park. They call it in Japan tree bathing because there's something in the air that trees release that is calming. Go to the park. Be around nature. Do things that are cost effective. Children aren't interested in money. They want your time. So if you spend more time with your children, how can you end up with a depressed child? How? For me, that's impossible. Unless you're spending more time with them and criticising them and being mean and horrible. But I don't think any self-respecting parent would do that. So spend more time, switch the tablets off, go tree bathing. Because it's the latest thing in Japan. I'm going to start doing it.
Thank you for that answer. On that note, you mentioned on Islam channel that visiting the doctor is an option to our children when facing a psychological issue. From experiencing depression myself, I believe communicating with close friends and family can heal us. Therefore, do you think we as a society need more understanding on supporting each other instead of just depending on medications?
Oh, I hate medicine with a fiery passion. I like the tablets. I think medication has its place. I also believe there's a lot of medication available to us that's not allowed into our vicinity because there's bigger problems going on. There's a lot of deals going on with pharmaceutical companies. So some medicines that clearly help and solve a problem are not taken because they solve a problem, and guess what? They won't need to be bought anymore. So I do think there's a lot of controversy going around money. But medicine aside, friends and family have their place. But I wouldn't say they're the be-all and end-all of dealing with anxiety and depression. Because sometimes when you're feeling anxious and depressed, your family, they're the people that sometimes you can't open up to because they know your history and they know your personality. And sometimes that could be used against you. And they don't necessarily always mean it. But remember, every person you meet is also dealing with their own pain. So to ask them to take on your pain consistently may be too much of a burden for them to bear because everyone's hiding some sort of pain behind a smile. I think professionals are a great help. I would actually say swap your tablets in your cabinet for a professional. Go and see a psychologist. Go and see a counsellor. Go and see an old teacher. Go and see someone. And because sometimes a new perspective is so refreshing. So I would say professionals have a huge amount of skill set. And I've learnt that from watching Tony Robbins. And there was a husband and wife in one of his episodes that were just at each other's throat. They clearly loved each other, but they were constantly arguing. And just by a few psychological questions, he found out that they were using certain things as emotional weapons. And so I was like, wow. See, when you're talking to your spouse or your partner, as much as your intentions are there to communicate and sort the problem out, you might not have the experience to deal with certain psychological issues, whereas a professional is trained in that area, so they will. We're all here to have a purpose, right? So psychologists have their purpose, and I have seen them do some wonderful things. So I think it needs to be a multidisciplinary approach to children and adults with depression. You need to have a secure home environment where there's open communication. They need to have an external community such as friends and family and local facilities where they can go and express themselves as well. But also we need to have psychologists on the NHS instead of medicines so that people talk through their issues and tackle them.
Agreed. I'm not going to lie. Thank you so much for that insightful answer. I am sure you have all given us some food for thought. We have reached the end of this first part to this YouTube interview. Let's finish off by focusing on how Allah guides us to be determined in life. From Surah Ra'd there is an ayat which states, for each person, there are angels in succession, before and behind him. They guard him by command of Allah. Verily never will Allah change the condition of a people until they change it themselves. In translation, Allah emphasizes the importance of perseverance in order to achieve anything we want in life. So Saleena, my last question is, what tools do you think Allah has given us to reach our dreams in life?
Oh my goodness me. I was reading a book the other day called Be the Change You Want to See in the World. And so I'm a big believer in exactly what you said. You've got to be the change you want to see in the world, even if that is hard. I think every single, for all 6 billion of us, excuse me, I have a cough, for all 6 billion of us on this planet, each and every one of us doesn't have the same fingerprint. And if that's the case, then each and every one of us doesn't have the same purpose. And we all have a purpose in this world. So what I would say is what I do when I'm unsure of what I'm really meant to do. I actually do what the prophets of old used to do, and that's not meditate, but sit in silence with yourself and listen. Complete silence. The first thing in the morning after Fajr is my favourite time. Complete silence, no children, no, I have a cat who annoys me, no cat, no husband, no parents. And I sit and I listen to my thoughts, my deepest thoughts, and I think to myself, what's feeling natural and what's not feeling natural. And then I have to, even though the decision to follow what's natural may be hard, I then think to myself, no, this is not feeling natural, but this is. So I made a decision recently when it came to my business, because I got a few opportunities to do something, and I did it, and I did not enjoy it one bit. And then I thought to myself, oh, I actually earned more money doing this, but I enjoyed doing this. So I've decided to take a pay cut and do this because in my moments of quietness, it felt natural. So find your moment of quiet and do what feels natural, even if it's hard.
Well, alhamdulillah, what a beautiful note to end on. Thank you very much for coming and talking to me on this day of Arafah about some really important issues. This is a part 1 interview, so Saleena will be returning in a couple weeks to talk about education. You are such an inspiring person, and hopefully we can do this on a regular basis, inshallah. May Allah bless you, Saleena.
Alhamdulillah, that was wonderful.